was a grain store. You remember the grain store in Westerly down by Agway?
Right.
There were a whole colony of feral cats, probably 20 of them. And I would pay for the shots and the neutering and everything of them. And the person who owned it was going to have a haven for them. So one day I go down there, the door's locked, closed for business, sold the property. So the new owner, nice guy, said, look, I'm going to give you, what do you need, a month to get the cats out of here? I don't want them here. The cats all ended up at Hirsch's Sanctuary. Had to catch every one of those. And they, feral they're community cats, but they're not friendly cats. So they all ended up at Hirsch's condominiums.
Let's take a look at it.
Look, there it is. See,
Wow.
see the cat there? They all have igloos. Oh, well, there's only 4 left now.
Good morning, Tom Galusho, President of the Westerly Historical Society, on October 23rd, 2024, with Mr. Larry Hirsch for our continuation of Reflections, an oral history project sponsored by the Westerly Historical Society. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. I think it's a wonderful program. I'm glad you're doing these things for remembrance of all the old timers that we never did in the past.
And you're one now. So.
And I hate to think of myself, but I'm one of the 86-year-old guys. But yeah, it's nice to be here, Todd. Thanks for having, and Greg, thanks for having me as well.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you this morning, Larry. So tell me, how did Larry Hirsch, how did you come about? Tell me about your grandparents and your parents, and
Yeah,
we'll go from there.
my grandparents and my father were from Poland. My father got out of Poland because of the pogroms, and the Russian Tsar were killing the Jews. And he was conscripted into the service, and he knew that would be the end of him. And he didn't talk a lot about it, Tom, but he told me that he watched his aunt get her head chopped off. So he fled, and he went to Germany, and then he went to France, and he was a cane maker in Paris. And his brother, one of his brothers, made it over to the U.S., and he sponsored my father. Father came over, settled in Boston, just in time for the Depression. My father had a jewelry store on Hanover Street in the North End. Ironically, Carlo Bragno, do you remember Dr. Bragno?
Yes.
Dr. Bragno lived with his family right next door to where my father had the jewelry store. Now, I don't remember any of that, but Carlo did bring me back to the North End and showed me where my father's store was, and they always called my father Sam the Jew. So the Depression came. My father didn't know where to go or what to do. He went bankrupt, and he met a salesman who said, there's 2 choices that I could recommend for you, Sam. He said, one is Dallas, Texas, and one is Westerly, Rhode Island. So my father said, where are they? And he said, Dallas, Texas is about 2,000 miles away, and Westerly's about 90 miles away. He came to Westerly. But he met my mother, who was born in Boston, on Beacon Hill. And a lot of people don't know there was a poor side of Beacon Hill, and there was a wealthy side of Beacon Hill. When you went over to the State House, it was the wealthy side. On the other side was the immigrants came in. First the Irish, they moved to like Charleston and that area. Then the Italians came and they moved to the North End. Then the Jews came, and then they ultimately moved out to Dorchester, Roxbury. So we met my mother there, and they went to Westerly and started. My mother has an interesting story too. She was the talented person, musician-wise, in the family. My mother played saxophone. As a little girl, we're talking about 1920s, and she got a scholarship to the Boston Museum of Art as a musician. And unfortunately, she went to the first time, and they also did nude sculpturing and everything. Being prim and proper, she saw that, she ran out, and that was the end of that. That saxophone stayed in the family about 5 years ago, I opened this big black box. There's her saxophone, along with the person who sold it to her, which was back in, he was in business about 1912 to 14, intact. So she played the piano and the saxophone. My father and I didn't play anything. Ed Smalley was a music teacher in Westerly, and my mother had a piano, and she wanted me to be a musician. After about 10 lessons, Ed Smalley said, he ain't gonna make it. He can't tap his foot and press his finger on the key. So that was the end of my music. Although I did play bugle, I played trumpet in Westerly High School, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but elementary school, they gave us the option of having a recorder or a bugle. I took the bugle. And you know that once a month I bring my bugle, I still have it. It looks like Custer's Last Stand. It's all bent and twisted. I bring it to the VFW. I play reveille and taps for the boys at the VFW. They said that what I'm doing is waking up the people at the cemetery next door.
Right.
So that brings me to Westerly, you know.
Okay, and you talked about elementary school. Where did you go?
I went to Park Avenue, well, I went to kindergarten at High Street School, which is now the condos. I went to elementary school on Park Avenue, which is now, I think it's the Methodist Church.
Methodist Church.
Then I went over to Elm Street School, which became the Catholic school, which is now going to be condominiums too. So I've destroyed all the background of my schools. Then I went to Babcock Junior High School, which is no longer a junior high school, and then Westerly High School.
Okay. After high school?
After high school, I got a scholarship, athletic, to Syracuse University. And I had the option of going to Michigan State, Syracuse, or Miami with Roger Schoening, Miami. Why I picked Syracuse, when you talk about winters, we'll never know what winters are like up at Syracuse. I thought I could handle the winters, horrible weather, but a great school, good, I enjoyed myself, maybe too much. And after 2 years, they gave a suggestion that I should maybe do something else for a while and put me on probation, so I signed up for the Army.
Okay.
Now, I wanted, remember Joe Algier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe Algier and I grew up, we were boxers together, and Tippy Salamino's father was our manager. And he said, why don't we go to California? Maybe we, you know, we like James Dean with the red jackets and the Porsche. I had the Porsche. Maybe we'll be movie actors. Well, my father, I didn't know this, but my father paid off Joe to say, go in the Army. So we went in the Army on a buddy plan. We get to Norwich, and we were ready to sign. I swear, and they said, you're in. And they said, Joe Algier, go home. Wait a minute, we're in a buddy plan. He had a hernia. He's strong as a bull. Yeah. So I said, well, if he's not going, I'm not. You're in the Army now. So I spent two years in the Army, active duty. Fort Dix, terrible, terrible place. And Chicken Casalino.
Yeah.
Remember Chicken?
I do know Chicken. Yeah.
In fact, I don't know what his real name is, but anyway, Chicken Casalino was a redeployment clerk at Fort Dix. So my father wanted me to stay in America. They were sending us over to Korea. Because he was friends with the Casalino, he got to him and he said, I'm going to send your son to Germany. So I spent 2 wonderful years in a MASH, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, in administration in Frankfurt, Germany.
Wow.
So that sort of brings me through the military, and I went back to Syracuse, finished up, got a little more stable. It wasn't so much a social thing. I became interested, said I didn't want to be in the military. Don't tell Tippy that. And I finished up at Syracuse. My thing at Syracuse was being on the boxing team. I was on the 1960 Syracuse boxing team that went to the NCAAs. Unfortunately, I got cut in the semifinals and got TKO'd at the last round. But if I could have won those fights, I would have been the same time as Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay. That was Olympic year, 1960. But anyways, I finished that. I went to Suffolk Law School, got my law degree, passed Florida, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island bar. And luckily I did, at this time I went to Florida instead of going someplace, and started my career in law in Miami. I was the prosecutor for the city of Miami for a couple of years, then went into banking practice, and my mother had passed away, and my father was not doing well, and the love of my life, Kay, I met her in Miami. She was a school teacher, and then she became my legal secretary, and then she became my boss, and we got married in Key West, Florida, where I had a home, which I don't know if you've been there, but it's paradise.
Oh, I've been to Key West. It's very nice.
And I went down with Kay to Key West, and I saw a nice little house. I said, boy, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, palm trees and everything, $15,000. Now, as a lawyer, I was probably making $10,000 or $11,000, $12,000 a year. I had to call my father. I said, Dad, I found paradise. Fully furnished, nice tenants, beautiful home in Key West, $15,000. He said, where's Key West? I said, well, mistake. It's about 90, it's an island 90 miles from Cuba and 150 miles from Miami. He said, are you crazy? What do you want to live there for? So he lent me the money, the down payment. I bought the house in Key West. I was a resident of Key West from 1968 until 2010. So I loved it there. It was paradise. That's period of time in Miami Key is when, as you know me, I became active with animals and animal welfare. In Miami, I belonged to an organization. You know, in those days, mainly women. I was like the sole guy trying to get things done. You know that. Yeah. That doesn't always work out well. And then in Key West, we found, believe it or not, maybe you know about it, Stand Up for Animals. We had Stand Up for Animals in Key West, yeah. And politically, they ran 2 shelters. It became a problem, and they were sort of chased out of town. They won the lawsuit against the town, but that was sort of dissolved. And I left Key West with all my animals. I had 3 dogs and about 8 cats and a van. I rented a van and drove straight through from Key West to Westerly, and I get to the Garden State Parkway toll booth, and the guy says to me, no vans. I said, I got Noah's Ark in here. What do you want me to do, let them all out on the road? I gotta do something. So finally, they let me through with a caravan of my pets, which I had, I bought the house in Westerly, and I bought it because it was a terrible day. Kay was in Florida. I had come up and I said, the guy had a German Shepherd, and it was fenced in. So I said, I'm buying this house because I got a place to put my animals. And I remember Joe Algier, my buddy who's deceased now, said, this house is a piece of crap. I said, Joe, it's 40-some thousand. He says, it's a terrible house. Fortunately, the house is in Avondale now. I was fortunate enough to know St. Toronto because I clerked for Charlie Nardone, which you had to do in those days to be a lawyer. And I went to work. He asked me, would I like to come back and work with the firm? I thought that was really nice of him to do. I did. I came back, worked with him, John Toronto, Vinnie Naccarato, Joe Turo, John Gentile, the who's who of the legal community in those days.
Some good guys.
And it was nice, and I also helped my father in the store. I became a gemologist, graduate gemologist, the American Gem Society, and I worked with my father there too. And eventually I ended up taking over the jewelry store with, I don't know if you remember, the history of that store was Santo Capizano worked for my father, Joe Castagnaro worked for my father, Ronnie Carlson.
I know Ronnie.
Ronnie
That's
Carlson
where it
was a
starts with.
great guy. Oh
Yeah.
my God, he was with my father from World War II ending until he retired in his 80s. And we had, and Joe Misto,
Remember Joe?
and Sherry Ornberg,
Mm-hmm.
and John Finnegan. I mean, it goes on, Frankie LaPierre. So there was so many people between McCormick's and the Westerly Jewelry. I think we employed everybody in Westerly, or family member in Westerly at some time. And interesting, Sherry Ornberg, who came back and worked there from the 70s, early 70s, is still there. She's still working.
I
You
can
know,
see her.
Steve and Sherry.
Yeah.
And Kevin was like the protege, much better with his hands than I ever was. And when it came time, well, I was on the board of the Westerly Hospital, thanks to Nelson Thorpe. I served 10 years as a board of directors of the Westerly Hospital when we made a profit in those days. And you know, Al Almeida was also on the board, Joe Kirby, and at the same time, I was asked to serve on the Washington Trust Board. I think I was the only one of my minority that ever served on the Washington Trust Board, thanks to Joe Kirby and to Jim McCormick. And I served there for about 18 years. And also, Al Almeida was on the board, and a lot of terrific people were on the board in those days, and it really was centered in Westerly. Now it's more diverse, and if you look at the Washington Trust today, I don't think there's anybody left who's from Westerly. It's more Providence in that particular area, but it still is a great bank. It was a great experience for me to learn about banking. And it wasn't a great experience to have to commute every month from Key West to get back to Westerly. You had to plan like 4 days ahead to be able to get back here by plane. That pretty much brought me back to where the jewelry store in 2000, I'm sorry, the bank was all concerned about Y2K. Remember that?
Yeah.
Everybody, it was Doomsville. The whole financial systems were going to collapse. So I said, you know, it's time that I got out of the jewelry business. I said, Kevin, you've been paying me to travel and do all these things. Why not pay me for equity in the business? So we entered into an agreement, which is kind of unheard of, that success of 10 years to pay me off, and the business will be his. He did it. He paid me off in 10 years, and now the business is his. And believe it or not, the business is 90 years old.
Wow.
Still operating. Not easy today. You know,
not at all.
it's still operating. Wow. That time period when Augie had the police department had the parking meters downtown, and Galusho, your uncle, was the police chief, and Nunn Cimolori was the captain. But downtown was vibrant in a different manner than it is today. I mean, like Lois might have said to you, that, you know, between Vaz Brothers and Statia's and Tani's and Toscano's and all the merchants were downtown. They had Bannon Drug Store. They had all these stores, specialty stores, meat markets, Munsell's and all. So on a Friday night, people dressed up and they promenaded downtown Westerly. It was just a wonder. You couldn't even walk on the sidewalks. business was great. I can still remember the average sale was probably $10. But every young lady would, when they were going to get married, they'd pick out china, crystal, you know, and they're all the stemware and everything, and then they'd have a weekly thing they made payments on and that kind of thing. But then downtown went into a decline, and stores were closing, and things didn't look good, although the integrity of the geographic of downtown stayed the same. And then all of a sudden we have now a whole new way of doing business. We have the establishments, the entertainment establishments, the United Theater. I'm sure you went to the United Theater.
I did.
You didn't go to the Central Theater though, but we had the theaters, we had everything like that. And then the United Theater, it's a great example, closed down, and along comes a savior, Chuck Royce. Mm-hmm. He brought that theater back. It is magnificent. It even, when I went the first time back to it, I sat in the same seats that we sat in when we were kids before we'd go to the YMCA and have dances by the bridges up in the terrace room. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful downtown. Again, now it's an entertainment center. From what was the bookstore, to the theater, to the skating ring, to I think there's more I'm trying to think of the name, by the Armory, all the venues that there are available for young people and older people to go and to enjoy themselves. So if you come into, I remember getting off the train in Westerly a couple of years ago, coming from New York, I couldn't get through town. It was so filled, the Knickerbocker.
Yeah.
You can go on, and it is as vibrant now as it was then, only a different kind of era. But there also was part of the real strength in reviving downtown, jumping around a little bit, reviving downtown was the group that formed to rehab downtown Westerly.
Sharon Ahern was the first executive director.
We were there, and
Downtown.
Not the Downtown Task Force.
Downtown Task Force.
Westerly Park Downtown Task Force. We met at the Washington Trust. Jim McCormick was involved with that. We went from a little group trying to build up the downtown with the tree program in the downtown. $1,000 a tree, everybody, unfortunately, it was the wrong tree we picked, but we didn't know. And we got so big that the boardroom of the Washington Trust could not handle us. So we had the whole top floor of the library, from the fire department to the police department to the politicians to the store owners, all gathered in this task force. And we really helped the Riverwalk bring back the downtown area.
Yeah.
In fact, we were a group that bought McCormick's from Jim McCormick, and we rehabbed that whole building. I can still remember. It was hard to do. We got one of the waiters, when we opened up, the grand opening was Nunzio Similori. He was not happy about it, but he had a tuxedo, and we had the champagne, and the building is wonderful now. I mean, all these buildings are wonderful. And that really brought back the downtown to a viable, active downtown.
Yeah, I remember Sharon sponsoring one of SUFA's first events, Bark in the Park.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And if you remember the first golf tournament we had in Weekapaug, I'm trying to think, names, the one who really organized it was the one who has the dog adoption thing.
Luis Nicolosi.
Luis Nicolosi was running around a Weekapaug golf course starting that golf thing. And you know, the most recent golf tournament at Lake of Isles netted something like $50,000.
Amazing.
For the low-cost clinic. But yeah, and during that time, being active with you, forming Stand Up for Animals from Charahoe Westerly Animal Rescue League, and God bless Alon Silman for hooking me into that system. And I remember us when they were starting SUFA, and Joe Turo called me in to the office, and he said, look, we'll fund it, we'll not fund it, we'll maintain it, we'll give you the property, but you gotta build it. Remember
100-year
that?
lease for $1.
100-year lease for $1, and
$1 a year.
and we had to raise $2 million. And he said, to stimulate you for doing it, we're going to name the road to the landfill, I call it the road to the dump, after you. So if you don't build the shelter, you're going to have the road to the dump. So I said, some people, there was Dorothy Lamour and Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, they had the road to Bali and the road to all these famous places. I get the road to the dump. So you and I started it, help from Steve Green for the CPA, and Tom Ligori, the Bulldog,
Right.
kept us going.
Ray Sharenza.
And Ray Sharenza, and we were successful in raising
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million to build this no-kill shelter, which is the model, one of the models for around New England for how a shelter can be built with the cooperation of a municipality, the public, and have it being operational. Now, as you know, they have a dog park. The little dogs, the big dogs, and the shelter dogs. They've got their own vet now, which we could never do in the past. We got a veterinarian to be able to go into and take care of the shelter animals. And now they have a low-cost clinic that is the most popular thing going, very reasonable, and the fees that that the people might not have, we fund like up to $500 to help them. I mean, I'm no longer part of it, I'm on the advisory board, but the succession has turned out, and they're doing very well.
You're a big part of that foundation.
Well, we both did it, and you know, at the same time, I got to know the Rhode Island Foundation, and there was a need in the school systems, Westerly, for things that would be necessary, but outside of the budget. So with Scott Kisner was the superintendent, Billy Nardone and myself, we formed the Westerly Education Endowment Fund, which they gave us like the Rhode Island Foundation gave us $25,000 as seed money, and right now they're in the 7 figures. They fund things that the budget won't do, and like they've got that food truck at the high school. They have all these different programs that they can't, books for the kids, and it's a very successful operation. In fact, I think now it's Steve White is now the president, but it's a very, very successful operation for the schools. And anyways, there was other programs, but that sort of brings me up to my retirement, and where did you ever have time to work when you're retired, as you know. And I keep myself busy that way. I'm also, you know, I run for my life. I've been running since I was in junior high school. I ran at high school, I ran at college, and I'm still running. And you know, we have a great track club. We just had our 49th reunion of the Westerly Track Club. You know, I think Tom McCoy, and the fun runs and everything started. It's a great thing for kids. If you went down there and saw the fun runs, you'd see how wonderful it is when you get about 100 little kids stacked off at the Pleasant View House and running.
I tell the story of part of my running background, and that is one, I ran 9 Boston marathons. My most successful was being able to, sexist me, beat the first woman, but ended up in the recovery tent with tin foil on, intravenous in my arm, and the next day they had it the Boston Globe sports section headline was a picture of me with the tinfoil, and the commentary was "What price glory?" But the story that I was trying to talk about was my buddy Mike Law and I and our wives. We went to Greece because they opened up the first Greek marathon since Phidippides took a dive and killed himself so we went over there. We started at Marathon. We all wore the Greek victory wreaths, went by the tomb of the unknown soldiers, put the wreath there. I finished, collapsed. I'm on the ground. I had Nike shoes. Nike is victory in Greek. The next thing I know, they're taking my shoes and taking off with my shoes.
Well,
But
they're stealing your shoes?
They were stealing my shoes. So my wife, they thought I was dead, by the way. But my wife comes down, and at the ceremony, I get a medal, like a gold medal. So it's in Greek. The ceremony is in Greek. I get home, and there was a guy, George Souris, who had a downtown restaurant in Westerly. So I said, he was from Greece. I said, George, what did I win? Second place women's master winner. That's my story about the marathon.
So I think that brings you pretty much up to date what's happening with me and the VFW and American Legion.
Still
and
active.
The DAV. I'm a disabled vet, and the DAV helped. It's not an easy thing if you're no veterans to get through the bureaucracy to get the disability and to get into the VA system. I mean, they put me through college with the GI Bill, but I injured my hands in the service, and I'm now 100% disabled, thanks to them, and also thanks very much to Senator Reed, a military man, a ranger, senator, who helped. His office has liaison to help people get through the disability process and the education process. So that's pretty much where I am. We still go to the VFW. We've got the Tippy Salaminos, we've got the Charlie Balladas, we've got a bunch of Alameda that we meet 3 times a week and have coffee at the VFW. And we also, David Sales, former fire chief, he is the local organizer of the honor flights. And I was chosen about 2 years ago to join a bunch of veterans from here and from the state of Rhode Island that went to Washington. What a wonderful operation. We got up, I thought I was back in the service. We got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't get home till 3 o'clock in the next morning. We go to Providence. They leased the whole aircraft. It was Southwest, took us to all the monuments, especially the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Changing of the Guard, things I'll never forget. What a memorable event, and how the fire marshal and David arranged to have like 80 guys and women and 80 people to help them. You had to have a wheelchair. So I'll never forget that wonderful opportunity. And we meet monthly. We met yesterday, the local guys, Steve Ornberg,
Okay.
Terry Chirallo, the only Marine, John Toronto, Jimmy Romanella. Anyways, it's a nice thing to continue.
Very nice. So in your lifetime, Larry, who was most influential to you? Who stands out?
Well, I'd say first of all, the people in the store, the Westerly Jewelry, Joe Castagnaro, a Marine, put me in line and taught me discipline, and Ronnie Carlson taught me inspiration as a guy that never had a bad word about anybody. I never heard him swear or anything. A wonderful family. And in school, I think about Winnie Bogle. Winnie Bogle was the English teacher in the junior high school. She was the Marlboro woman of our era. And I can still remember I wrote a paper on, it was, I think it was on Joe Louis, the fighter. And she gave me an A, but she said, Larry, you'll never amount to anything because nobody can read your writing.
1956.
What is that?
That's my essay that I did for my English teacher, Miss Bogle, the one that said I never make it and be anywhere because they couldn't read my writing. So she gave me an A, though, on this paper about, that's when I knew I wanted to be a fighter, because it was about John L. Sullivan and his life story, the first champion with gloves. So there it is,
Why'd she say you'd never make it?
because she couldn't read my writing.
You were left-handed?
You know, you're too young, you remember? They had desks, and the inkwell was on the right. And left-handed, you'd reach over to get the ink, and when you wrote, you smeared it across the paper. So she said, I'll never make anything. This is
So you became a prize fighter?
so I became a prize fighter. This is
Tell us
this is
about
my
that.
graduation picture.
Tell me about your prize fighting.
Well, when I was in high school, Tippy Salamino, father, same name, Thomas Salamino, was a boxing manager. He also was the manager of Tarzan Brown in the Boston Marathons. He thought I was a good fighter. So I and a couple of other guys, Joe Algier, a real tough middleweight, I was a lightweight, we trained at the United Theater, believe it or not, downstairs. And Tippy thought I was good enough that he and there's a Vera Marone that had a restaurant there. They wanted to sponsor me and pay for my tuition at URI and be a fighter. Of course, my parents were not happy with that, so they quashed that thing. But then I went to Syracuse on a boxing scholarship, and I made it to the semifinals of the NCAA boxing tournament, got a cut over the eye, and that was the year when Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, was the heavyweight Olympic. So I could have had a chance to maybe be in the, I would have never made it, but I could have been in the Olympic trials. This is interesting here. So I went on, I fought, and I also fought. I won the Golden Gloves in Massachusetts, New York State, and I also boxed in law school. And my manager, two of them, one of them was Matt Lewis, the lawyer. So they put me in fights, and they get a prize, and I ended up getting beat up and them getting the prizes. But all through law school I did. That's my mom and dad at their store. Westerly Jewelry. We're talking back.
Wow, that's great.
I think here's a picture, one of my fights. Here's a picture of me with Jersey Joe Walcott, the heavyweight champion at Syracuse.
Then I remember Lillian Ruisi. She was my Italian teacher, and she instilled the culture of Italy in me, not Italian American, but of the town of Westerly and what the heritage is in our community. And I thought she was wonderful. Even after I finished high school with Lillian, I used to write her letters from Europe, and I'd go to Italy. I wasn't pretty good, but I went to Italy and I'd find a nice Italian lady, and I'd ask her to write the letter for me to Lillian, and she said, oh, marvelous. Oh, she's so proud of me as being able to converse and write in Italian. So I stayed with, and then there was a Mr. Smith, And he was the civics teacher, which I think they're bringing back finally, but they should bring back to the schools. And he was inspirational in teaching me about government and about the Constitution and how things work. And there was a Miss Grinsheimer who was an English teacher and taught me a little bit about my culture, teaching me about books to read to find out of my heritage and everything in school. So those were the teachers that I remember in the Westerly school system that were really an inspiration to me.
That's a nice tribute to them.
Yeah, that was. And we're still, by the way, Tom, we're still active, Tom. So that, we still get together, Bob McVicker, him, our classmates, Gene Spizzato, Barbara Fallon, and we're get together Friday. We get together once a month. So the nice thing about Westerly is the friends you meet and the friends that stay. Even if you couldn't, you moved on to other things. If you were able, you came back to Wester to live. And to sum it all, up, it's the Westerly way. It's just a wonderful community with wonderful people. And I couldn't think of a better place to live. It's just the palm trees don't grow up here, so we have a little problem that way. But
So 86 years in the books, Larry. What do you want to be remembered for?
Compassion, understanding, contributing to this most wonderful community. And back to my father, he instilled in me and gave me these ideas with his business acumen. And my mother was very active. I still remember my mom knitting bandages for veterans of World War II, and also we had the air base in Charleston, and every weekend we'd bring in some of the armed forces to have dinner with us and stay at the house. So she brought out the emotional part of me and the social part of me, and what I think the ability to have the friends that I have and the family I have, and that I'd like to be remembered for what I might have contributed to my family, my friends, and my wonderful town, and the animals.
I'll show you a cat here. This was the wildest of the wildest cat. It took me 6 years to catch this cat. And finally, when I caught him with a drop trap, he became the friendliest guy in the whole world. Here he is. He's a beautiful cat.
Look at him. What's his name?
What's your name? We call him Big Boy.
Really? He's sweet. Hi, big boy.
He had nice. You wouldn't believe that he was. And people say, "Oh, you can't tame feral cats." Well, you certainly can.